to make it work. Thank you. I apologize. Thank you for your patience. We will have several people make presentations tonight, and we'll tell you a little bit more about why this team is here tonight as opposed to the team that you had at the last community meeting. We have, as I said, we are trying to also stream this to Facebook Live. We're also taping it so that if for any reason we have glitches with Facebook Live, it will be recorded and we can put it up online on the park website and Facebook later so everybody can see it. So we're trying as much as we possibly can to get this available to as many people as possible. We will take questions at the end after everybody's had a chance to make presentations. From the audience, we have a mic and we'll answer as many questions as possible. We will also attempt to answer any questions that may come into the chat. So if you're online and you have questions or comments, if you would like to drop that into the chat, we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible this evening. With that, I'm going to start with the Park Superintendent, Clay Jordan.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. You know, I like to wander when I talk and all this, so I'm going to try to discipline myself for the cameras and all that and try not to wander too much around. So I think I have met a great number of you now. This is our 5th public meeting, and as Carrie said, if I haven't met you yet, I am the superintendent of Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. And I came on board last November, right on the heels of the SQF complex. So here we are, you know, less than a year later, and here we are again. And so I want to do something a little bit different than what we've done with the other meetings. So in each of those meetings, right, we get into the operations update, and we work our way around the map and really get into the weeds of tactics and the actions that are going on around the map. And we've been doing that now for 4 public meetings, and we've been doing that for 2.5 weeks. And yet, with all that detail and all that description of work and now 1,800 people on this fire and all kinds of aircraft and dozers and engines and whatnot, we're only showing 8% containment. 8% containment. Now, if you had told me 2.5 weeks ago that at this point we would be less than 10% containment, I probably would have said, oh, I'm not sure I want to hear that. But here we are. So what does that mean? And is there anybody in here concerned about what that means, only less than 10%? Yeah, you know, we get into a lot of detail about the operational things that are happening, but what I want to do for the next 10 or 15 minutes is to step back and kind of talk about the larger strategies, and so that we're all a little bit more informed. And there's a lot of conjecture, and I haven't had time to read the blogs and all that, but I get briefed, and I know that there's a lot of speculation as to what that means. And I think on the surface, it does seem to undermine confidence in the ability of the firefighting organizations to contain this fire, because that's a metric that we're used to seeing and using to measure progress on a fire. So I think it's worth talking about it, and I want to address head on some of the information that is out there. There is a lot of misinformation out there, and I want you to at least be well informed. It doesn't mean that we're all going to agree at the end of the night. It doesn't mean that that anything I say or anything else you hear tonight may make you more comfortable than where you're at right now. But at least I think we'll have that dialogue, and you'll know some perspectives behind the scenes, some of the discussions that we have going on. And so why 8%? And I might need some help in case I'm missing something from the blogs. I know what some of the rationales are, or some of the thinking is as to why we're at 8%. One of them, right, and I've written them down here just to preload. I'm going to see if I'm missing any from you. But number Park Service, fires burn. And we are letting this fire burn resource benefit for the benefit of the ecosystem, concerned about the communities, right? Heard this? Right? Okay. Number two, all we focus on the giant sequoias. We don't really care about anything else. Is that out there? Okay. Number three, we're not being aggressive enough to go after this fire. And that's a pretty broad statement, and there is room for good debate on this one. But so breaking this one down, we're going to break it down a little bit further. I've seen out there that, we don't allow dozers in the park, or certainly not much dozers in the park. That we don't allow retardant and the aircraft to drop retardant because we're concerned about environmental concerns. And the third one is that we're not doing enough direct attack on this fire. Now we're going to talk about direct versus indirect. And that is all under that category of not being aggressive enough. And then the fourth category, right, the fourth possible rationale is that the containment is low because there has been, and it's related to not less direct attack. If you're not doing direct attack, you're doing indirect attack. And when you do indirect attack, you have a lot less containment in the beginning. So those are some of the things I know I'm seeing in the, or hearing about in the blogosphere. Am I missing anything? Do you have any other concerns as to what could be a reason for why we're less than 10%?
There was a piece on 60 Minutes last night, and one of the things that they brought up, not about this specific fire, because I think it was recorded before this one, but it was specific to California and saying that CAL FIRE and the Park Services aren't working well enough together, and so they have, these Chinook helicopters, and they have all this equipment, and it's sitting on the ground not being used.
And that was regarding the fire at night.
Right. Well,
Okay.
day and night, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're going to talk a little bit about that. I appreciate that. And that kind of falls under this category of not being aggressive enough, right? Having tools that are available and not applying them, right? So I want to talk about these things in a little bit more detail. The first thing I think what's really important when we talk about 8% containment, what does that really mean? When we call a part of the fire, and we are showing some containment in the Mineral King area and up in the Lodgepole area around those two communities. So what does that mean? Does that mean that there's no other fire lines around or containment? It does not, and some of you are shaking your heads, and you're right about that. Firefighters don't like to call a section of the fire perimeter contained unless there really is no unburned fuels between the head of the fire and the fire line, and that line has kind of been tested, or there is a high degree of confidence that this line will at least hold normal conditions. Not going to hold everything. You can get spotting, and you can get some what we call slop overs, but we don't like to call something contained unless it is looking pretty secure. And so with that understanding, then let's look at these four categories and evaluate them a little bit more for reality. So number one, letting the fire burn for resources. We're stepping back. We're just saying, hey, let's let it just burn and cover some ground. So it is no secret that we are proponents of fire on the landscape. Okay? We need more fire on the landscape in order to prevent the conflagrations, in order to prevent the big ones. So that's prescribed fire, and we've been doing it here in Sequoia Kings Canyon since the 1960s. And it is the use of occasionally letting those natural lightning fires to be able to manage them, to be able to grow in a place. But here's the key. We only would do that when we're within a prescription. In other words, when the assessment of the fire, whether it's a natural fire start or we have started with purposely, is when the conditions allow that fire to spread in an area that the resources can benefit, right? Some areas of the backcountry have fire-dependent species. Some areas we're trying to reduce the fuels, and so we apply it when we can get the benefit to the resource, when we can burn off those extra fuels, but it means it needs to be low-intensity fire. Low-intensity fire. High-intensity fire, number one, is hard to control, right, and poses a real risk that we may not be able to contain it. And number two, high-intensity fire kills the trees and causes really high mortality to the trees, including the giant sequoias, which is what we're really trying to protect. So this year, we have had about, I think, close to 20 fires in Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park. A lot of them are back in the wilderness. None of them have been managed fires. All of them have been suppression fires. Why? Because of the extreme drought. It is not safe to just allow them to just go unchecked. And as far as the resource, we're not helping the resource if we have high-intensity fires because of the drought, because of the heavy accumulation of fuels. So that one I hope we can take off the table. All right, this fire, these started as two fires. We jumped on them with everything that we had since day one. So it has never been about letting them burn. Okay, so if we take that off the table, focus on the sequoias. Well, I think I spoke to this, I think, at the last public meeting. And obviously the sequoias have gotten a lot of national and international media attention. We've seen it. And at the national and the international, if you interpret those, you would get a sense that that's all the media cares about. Now, that's not true of the local media, right? The local media are our neighbors, and they certainly do care about covering the community protection as much as anything else. But you can easily get the impression that it's all about the sequoias from the Park Service perspective, right? Well, I have been clear since day one that to the last management team, to this management team, that yes, the sequoias are important to us. We get it. They've been around a couple of thousand years. People come from around the world to experience these trees. It's important to the local economy. So yes, they do matter a lot to us, and we are going to put special focus into the protection of the sequoias. However, we've always been clear that that is second to protection of the communities. And if you count up, out of the 1,800 people that are on this fire, a relatively pretty small percentage of that has anything to do with protecting the sequoias. Most of those efforts are on trying to contain this fire and to keep it from being a threat to the sequoias and to the communities, okay? So it's not all about the sequoias, even though they're important to us. So I hope we can put that one to rest. Number three, not aggressive enough. Now this one gets a little bit trickier because firefighting, wildland firefighting, is a science. It is not an exact nature, and there's a lot of different experiences of experts. First of all, dozers, all right? Up to this point now, we now have 19 miles of dozer line within Sequoia National Park, 19 miles, okay? We added some mileage today, and we may not be done. Now that's unprecedented, and I'll probably get attacked by some people at some point, being the dozer king or something like that, but... And towards that effort, we do